If you take fitness to the max effort degree or max effort level, you're going to end up here. Realization fitness, contemplative CrossFit.
Not that bad. Show us tools. Show us tools.
Coming closer to a Buddha radiation is just one example. People take DMT, for example, or LSD even. They have a quote-unquote bad trip, or they experience like existential fear, or like we've been talking about ontological shocks. Right? Why do you experience that? Because you don't have enough fitness to rest in recognizing the unconditioned through, with, and as your conditionings and afflictions again and again and again on and off the cushion. And that takes fitness and mastery, which is usually not communicated in modern spiritual circles. The importance of physical training and how that should be distinguishable from mind and life training. The strength work to push through suffering and to stabilize the groundless ground through yogic capacity, which provides the flexibility to maneuver through life obstacles, mental and emotional obscurations, and ramping up the escape velocity to exert, so one can take the quantum leap into the unknown. But also endurance work like running a marathon to exhaust and cook your karmas, no different than burning fat. Getting squared away, right, without distractions and act virtuously. That's the diet part. So strength times speed is power. We're basically creating the ultimate being, the maestro, the contemplative athlete. Other topics include laziness and procrastination, the difference between motivation and aspiration. If you click on this video, you want something, probably something that has to do with like awakening or spirituality, realization, enlightenment.
Smiling incline bench press.
You're looking online and trying to find solutions to your problem. Why am I not this or that? Yeah, why don't I have anatta? Yeah, why don't I have non-duality? Yeah, why don't I have this or that Frank experiences like 4K 360 awareness? Is it because of the practices that I'm not doing? I'm not working hard enough? Or is it because my karma isn't ripe yet? Maybe I don't have the right genetics. Or is it because you're asking all these questions from a view that you're not seeing? I've always been pretty disciplined, actually. It's just that after realization, there's just less attachment to the things I have to do, but I'm still doing them. But now there's just way more spontaneous and effortless. But still, even from that place of spontaneity, there's a pretty structured routine to my life. I guess that's just something that's built in because my mom made me practice violin when I was like 5. Like I said, when I got into this like self-development, that which eventually turns to self-transcendence, I just was able to really just buckle down and accomplish things that I set my mind to. I think one of the reasons is because I was into fitness. Right? Fitness is really train your mind to be disciplined. Just go to the gym like day in and day out for years at a time. Yeah. And that's how I looked at my journey too. It's like people always ask me, how did you get into meditation? It's like, it's just a continuation of my journey and evolution from, I don't know, I can say I started out playing the violin, but there's a fitness in violin too, right? You're practicing scales and, you know, playing on the violin 3 hours a day requires a lot of fitness, mental, physical fitness. I think violin is actually one of the instruments that activates their entire body because you need to have the cortex, the visualization skill, the logic. That's the left brain, quote unquote, if you want to divide it that way. And there's also the right brain, imagination, creativity. Interpret the music, you have to feel the music with the your emotional part of the brain, like your limbic system. And then there's the brainstem, because you need to control your muscles to fire very intricately, right? And what is that but, you know, mind to mind and mind to muscle and mind to violin connection. But ultimately, it's just mind to mind connection. And then when I got into fitness, everybody's training for like mind to muscle connection or like mind body connection. But then once I started getting Vipassana, I realized the whole body is just mind. Yeah, you're gathering all the sentient resources. Just like you're firing all the sentient resources and collect them, unify them all at once until there's no more distinction between reality, between mind and body, and the universe to universe connection. And then even that goes away, where there's completely coreless, and empty and open.
If you're free from here, you can fly.
Some of the non-dual community might be like, what the fuck? Why would there be fitness to realization, right? But then if you look at all the Kamapas or the Lamas or Rinpoches, they started training, going to scholarly schools when they're like 4 years old. Even in Zen, they practice and do koans for hours and hours a day. They go to school, spend their entire life on this thing. We just live in the modern time where, for some reason, the realization business is just somehow different from like mastering the violin or like piano or like going to school, which is really strange. Yeah. Oh, there's nothing to do. I don't need to practice. Oh, if you're still suffering, there's more work to do, period. Yeah, I think the limitation of most non-dual teachings, especially what you extrapolate from the internet, is that they try to explain everything away with the ultimate. So in our 90-day bootcamp training, we formally sit up to 90 minutes each morning, followed by 90 minutes of discussion, up to 3 times a day, depending on your level of fitness and your choice of engagement. The training is as systematic as an Olympic athlete or a marathon runner's preparation, designed to peak at just the right time. And that's not even counting the off-cushion practice. It's an invisible monastery beyond space and time. It's a lifestyle. It takes total exertion of the self to go beyond the self until you become the total exertion of the whole universe and be seamlessly connected with the countless webs of causes and conditionings that makes this moment precisely the way it is. And in order to generate that raw energy to make the quantum leap into the unknown, one has to be authentic. One has to generate interest, virtue, and bodhicitta. One has to shred away the fat and the conditionings that slows you down. Peace of mind is a byproduct, not a goal. Look how hard Siddhartha exerted. That's how Buddhas are forged. And when it's all said and done, you're just on 24/7, and everything you do is a byproduct of nothing. I just went on my first run. Second day of training. 3 miles today. It felt easier than yesterday. And at the end, I could tell like the untangling, untwisting of tiny little karma. It's just exhausting.
We don't just sit around doing
We don't just sit around.
No,
Yeah,
what do we
this
do?
feels exactly the same again as this morning, the transmission. Yeah, but then now I realize why we said your art is time. Each cycle, each fractal, until it just inconceivable. Fractals, yeah. And then it's like the whole bootcamp is one single moment, and then within that one single moment, every 3 weeks is like what, a phase, right? 4 phases. Right now we're the silent phase, my transmission. But each phase, it's almost like a moment, but then a fractal of a moment. And then within that fractal, there's each week, and then each sit, each day, each sit. And each acolyte's mind is also a moment. It's also a fractal that contains the whole. The same thing goes on in the marathon, right? On the whole race, it's just a whole race. It's like a moment, right? But then within this moment, there's different phases of the race, and then the training cycle as well. And a moment is something like a 4-dimensional spheroid unfolding as 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. And it's not like you are inside that spheroid, you are that spheroid. Our head coach Mei Chen, he even says that every morning the transmission sessions are equivalent to the workout of the day in CrossFit. So the transmission is a spatial-temporal co-creating orchestration, co-resonating a Buddha feel through this mandala. Every morning, it literally feels like we're taking you guys on a run or a ride on the magic carpet, traversing through the inconceivable. There's warm-up and there's peaking, and then there's cool-down, just like how you train for a vertical jump or during a powerlifting meet. You peak just at the right time. In the training, there's repetition, volume, intensity, progressive overload, tapering, integration, and pacing. Realization fitness is realer than real.
When I owned mental health and addiction treatment centers, I was the one that was allergic to structure. A lot of anger repressors are allergic to structure because we're not aware that the need for safety is why we're so anti-structure until we're more conscious. But if you think about it, that's the authority thing, that's the dad, that's teachers exercising a power over us, and we buy into it or we don't want to because we have this deep fear and anger. So I think a lot of the allergic to structure is actually anger and hurt repression. Now in my mental health and addiction treatment centers, I was the one allergic to structure. I did all the creative stuff, but I stayed away from the structure. And my partner and my clinical director created all the structure. They were perfectionists, so they needed structure really for safety. It's safety on both ends of it's fear. So like if I'm anti-structure, it's because I'm afraid of conflict or feeling and expressing something that's at the root. If I'm very clingy to structure, it's almost like the attachment styles. I gotta cling to something. I can't live without that structure, it's too scary. If you just treat it like fear under both, it's a cleaner process. And there's like a balance or a middle way. I like the middle way language. If we're not allergic to structure because of fear, and we're not clinging to structure because of fear, how can structure be used effectively? And that's how we do it in our program. Like we'll create structure to help somebody catch their self-sabotage, or to actually help them follow through with something. If they're allergic to structure, then let's see your resistance to it. If you're really dependent on structure, can I take a little bit of it away so that you can feel a little bit uncomfortable and process that?
You want to stop me?
A Lama Lena said that having a routine is the most important thing in life. In meditation retreats, a strict structure is created so one can lose his mind in a contained, controlled manner. Jazz musicians can only freestyle spontaneously after they've trained classically and practiced scales every single day. Even Michael Jordan practices free throws consistently. Picasso said that he's able to abstract because he's already learned how to paint like Raphael when he was 14 years old. Parkour athletes and sprinters need to do squats. Foundation matters. When you have the right view, the interdependency between order and chaos will balance themselves out. What is the right view? The nature of mind beyond, but include all extreme views, like effort versus effortlessness, gradual versus sudden path, expansion versus contraction, self versus non-self. Right view will lead to right effort, so you can will without agency, think without thoughts, and desire without grasping. Without the right view, one can be practicing for eons and still get nowhere because you'll just be reinforcing the same view, even if you think you're making progress.
So there is, in a sense, from a perspective, no self here, and no one doing anything, no controller.
So you never had a controller. Why did you do it? Like even before awakening, nobody had a controller. Actually, after awakening, it freezes up a lot of your mental space, and then your energy frees up. Actually, my physical conditioning and my work capacity in terms of how I can work in terms of like my editing or my coaching increased exponentially because I didn't have to hold on to that illusion of a separate controller. But then you never really had a separate controller. You just had a bunch of thoughts that tells you that you have a separate controller. So that's the only thing you're letting go of. If you have no resistance, then you're not really thinking about what you're doing. In a sense, you're just in I guess you could call it a constant flow state. You're actually just tapping into nature. Nature is always unfolding through the course of the least resistance. Yeah, but then that doesn't mean that there's no structure, because that structure that I have right now in terms of routine is just part of that flow. That is my particular way that the cosmic condition unfolding.
So I used to have a problem with this earlier in my life after I had a few insights where I felt like I became a lot more lazy, like I couldn't make myself do things like before.
Yeah, that's very common actually. That's very common. I went through phases that myself, but then it usually only lasts for a brief period of time. Yeah, one of the reasons is because as your identity or your ego structure is dissolving, some of the things that you used to do to fulfill your ego desire is getting released. It's getting exhausted, so of course you're not going to have the same kind of woof to do some of the things that you used to do. Another reason is because, like I said in the very beginning of the interview, you might be holding on to the view of there's nobody here and there's nothing to do. That's a very common non-dual view that people then conceptualize and turn it into a way of life that they think at first. They may think, I'm kind of following this truth. Maybe they have some experiences of non-doership or whatever, but they turn that into a worldview in which all their beliefs are extrapolated from, all the ways in which they make meanings are extrapolated from. And then that kind of gives them a reason for them not to do anything. Take a sip of the wine. Have a good party. This is my first concert in 15 years.
Yes?
Yes.
What time are you playing?
It's not like it's wrong to say there's nothing to do and there's nobody here, but it is just a view. Not that there is a distinction between the ultimate and the relative, but if you haven't truly bridged that gap, one is just justifying it or bypassing and explaining things away. Another thing that people try to explain away is that, there's no time, there's no karma. Well, timelessness includes all three times. And even though karmas are ultimately just appearances, it is important to understand, how phenomena compound, to reinforce what kind of karmic trajectories, what is your condition becoming. This is why you see people who are abiding in non-dual awareness even, but still there are conditionings and traumas that just don't seem to be resolved for years and years, because very few people talk about how karma works. Just sitting isn't enough, right? One has to recognize exactly the patterns of your volitional formations and karmic trajectory. So in my next video, I'm going to talk about exactly how karmas are formed and how to not exactly dissolve your karmas. Sure, there's a sense of exhaustion, but more importantly, how do you repattern and refragment conditionings? Neither expansion of consciousness infinitely nor annihilating the self leads to liberation. Eternalism and nihilism are just two sides of the same self-view, or annihilation, or solipsism. All these are extreme views. You want to be able to see the lack of inherent existence in both compounded phenomena and uncompounded phenomena, in both existence and non-existence.
Carl Jung talks about the libido as not just sexuality, but like our entire life force. And he also talked, like Freud did, about emotional repression. The reason I like Carl Jung's viewpoint is because it takes into consideration that we're blocking ourselves. We hold our life force back, but we don't have consciousness of how we do it. So procrastination was driven by programming hidden in my body that once I put words to it, it basically said, you can't, don't. It wasn't even a full sentence, it was a trauma response. And so trauma responses don't arise, they just hide in the body going like this, so that procrastination becomes a constant thing. By making that conscious, what was with that was a fear of anger. So the buried anger had the don't, because it's not safe, you'll find conflict, they won't love you, you'll lose everyone. So just stay here and don't do anything. So as I processed that while I procrastinated, that's what I'm saying, if you have an addiction, process it, don't try to get rid of things. My life force came online. My libido, but that's not just sexuality, that's everything, that's abundance of energy. We have to hold some of it back to survive, but as you allow it, you don't have the procrastination problem. That was because of the fear of vulnerability or conflict or something in the world. You can really be unsuccessful with procrastination. It's very easy, actually. For example, to sit and witness things and stories like about why you're procrastinating keeps you out of the body, keeps you out of this conditioning that's actually driving it. And if you can fundamentally understand that with all these states of suffering, our conditioning is successful when we're procrastinating, then you won't be so against it. You don't even try to move beyond it. You trust yourself, and then you just make that conditioning conscious until it's natural and you're not trying to push beyond it. If you push beyond your conditioning, you traumatize yourself. If you don't process buried emotions and just go try to not procrastinate, it's not safe. So the system will go, we're going to go back to procrastination. If I keep telling you to witness stories or thoughts or miss the buried emotions, then we're going to stay in this loop and you're never going to be able to get out of it.
Making an effort to dissolve conditioning is like creating a knot over here to untie another knot over there. You'll be endless. Instead, you pay homage to your afflictions and recognize its patterns. It is only through, with, and as your conditionings can you realize the unconditioned, the unborn, the space-like nature of mind, that which is not apart from all the conditionings, but no conditionings can touch it. Resting is the fitness to be with whatever is arising, and recognition is the lucidity and the clarity of how much you can recognize your patterns. Find that middle way, neither indulge nor dissociate. Karmas have a way of sorting themselves out through the course of nature, but you do have to rest and recognize through the right view.
He's perfect.
In the last two boot camps, sure, there's yogic practices as well, but we emphasize a lot on refining the view. If you don't question your views, one can be practicing for who knows how long. You have this shift, that shift, and then this experience, that experience, and then you're like endlessly dissolving conditionings with like retreats here, psychedelics there, and it's still coming from the same ontological container. You are stuck on a catch-22 loop, constantly chasing your own tail. Nothing seems to be fundamentally changed. So a view is basically the matrix that is your entire reality, construed by the configurations of the 5 aggregates of form, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness. And different views have different geometries to their concavities. And views go much deeper than ideas, concepts, or worldviews, dictating every aspect of your life, beliefs, emotions, habitual tendencies, actions, which then further compounds to calcify these views. This is the cycle of samsara. The viewless view, the non-dual presence, is always there. But for sentient beings, there's too many obscurations and afflictions in the way, too many extreme views that we're clinging onto. So there's still a progression to refine our views, to purify the adventitious stains. The subtle and the gradual path do not contradict each other. You still need the fitness and the aspiration to accumulate insights and merits and put in the reps. You still need to be cooked. You convert karma to dharma. And that takes mental and physical strength, endurance, power, yogic intelligence, abilities. the flexibility to shapeshift between stillness and movement. A true athlete doesn't avoid the pain and the stresses that come with training to reach a certain level of threshold. Mind training is no different. To rest as restlessness and to contend with pain without suffering requires right view and right effort. To develop the capacity to simultaneously rest while inserting power is a key aspect of Bruce Lee's philosophy. Realization fitness is no different because you must channel a tremendous amount of force to refragment karmas. It's like there's nobody here doing anything. There's no free will. That's an extreme view, right? So like actually the more liberating view is that it's neither free will nor determinism. You just kind of throw away these kind of concepts. You don't do things or not do things because of free will or determinism, right? It's like you transcend even the duality between like doer and no doer, self or no self. Again, you just see them as different ways that phenomena are compounded. That's why that insight is so important. When you see how phenomena are compounded, you don't cling on to any state. You don't even cling on to certain insights. I think up to a certain point, you just follow the flow of the universe. One shot, please. Now you must give back to that gentleman. It's his beer.
Oh, sorry.
There is no fastest way to enlightenment method, ultimately. Right? For every technique, one must consider the relationship between content and context. What is the purpose and intention of each practice? And then self-invalidate the whole container when it serves its purpose. Because from the perspective of a clean shirt, both the detergent and the stains are obscurations. Every remedy or method must be self-invalidated. So you have to let go of all your grounds and anchors to not just free fall, but fly. Because there is a volition, an orientation, or a destiny. Fitness matters. Oftentimes people mistaken remedies or methods for truth. They think the means is the end. So there's no single most efficient technique to become faster, stronger, weirder. During my path, I've self-invalidated every technique used. Vipassana, do nothing meditation, self-inquiry, koans, breathwork, twim, right? But that's not to say that these methods aren't valid during certain phases of the path. Purpose, intention, self-invalidation, repeat. So it's a one-shot, ongoing, ruthless process of non-affirmative negation. So the process is one of going further and further in, while simultaneously going further and further out, without any reference points whatsoever. Without any reference points to a savior, a method, goodness versus badness, bliss versus dark night. And finally, we might be able to reach a basic level of hopelessness. That's another way to put it. You have to become completely hopeless, which then becomes a kind of a transcendental hope. We still have all the energies, all the fascinations of discovery, of seeing this process unfold and unfold and unfold, simply for the sake of interest itself, simply for the sake of life. Right? This process of discovery automatically recharges itself. So we keep on going deeper and deeper and deeper, where we experience insanity and outsanity simultaneously. This is the ongoing process of death and rebirth over and over, of ruthlessly cut through and self-invalidate any chance we might have of confirming ourselves at any particular stage of development. Right? This is the entry to the deathless. When we discover that we've made some progress on the spiritual path, that discovery of progress is regarded as hindrance to further progress. And this is where aspiration comes in, because motivation will only get you so far. You will get your foot in the door, but you won't finish the job for you. Personal motivation, I want to be enlightened, I want to become smarter, so I meditate, I want to become more calm and peaceful. Whatever the case may be, that's all conditioned, right? That's all on the samsaric level. You're going to eventually run out of a motivational energy, and aspiration will have to take over. Ultimately, you just do it. This realization business, right? You just do it for the love of the game. Virtue for virtue's sake. Interest for interest's sake. Interest with a capital I. Continuously create. People ask me about procrastination a lot, and I never can give an answer. I don't know, since I was young, I'm just always doing things for its own sake. You know, when I did the vertical jump, for example, I wasn't doing it to get better at basketball or for sports. I just wanted to jump higher, run faster. I just wanted to get stronger for no reason. People sign up for the boot camp or they go to the Vipassana retreat thinking that, if I meditate for this many hours, I'll attain this or that level of absorption, this or that jhana or cessation, or even get anatta. But actually, you cannot want anatta, right? First of all, for the millionth time, it's not a thing that someone can attain. That's already the wrong view, the wrong starting condition. It's the starting condition that got you here in the first place, right? The self-view. Anatta is a non-affirmative negation. It's the luminous sentience that gets revealed when you self-invalidate everything, including the process of self-invalidation. Realization is the end of you, right? But still, motivation on the personal level, on the relative level works, but only up to a certain point. You're going to eventually realize that the motivational factors that got you started on the path is what's keeping you away from the realization, and you're going to have to cross the chasm. That quantum leap, that leap of faith is going to take off all by itself. How does that happen? Well, it's really beyond the scope of this video, which is why you have to sign up for the 90-day bootcamp. You put in the reps, accumulate merits and insights. Eventually, you hit a point where the escape velocity just speeds up exponentially. You leap into the nature of mind, where the self-invalidation process is faster than the speed of light. It's beyond speed, beyond coming and going. So think about the amount of force and speed and power and practice and virtue that needs to be generated to flip not just your karma, but the karmas of all sentient beings and self-arise. Enlightenment. I'm enlightened.
你会 meditation 吗？
Meditation. I'm meditating. Oh, I'm fine. Meditating. People think Frank Yang used to be crazy, but he was still in a convention. He wasn't insane enough to jump off the cliff, to cross over to the enlightened horizon and go beyond even the duality between sanity and insanity. He wants to appear special or unique. It's still being measured, right, by what the convention thinks is insane. You got to go beyond all conventions. And this is what Trungpa Rinpoche means by crazy wisdom.
Because your nature of mind is not affected at all. It's completely stainless and pure. So that's where like kind of the whole tantric whole idea of doing unconventional actions like eating meat, fornicating, all these things come into play, where traditionally you would renounce these things, right? Though you can't even look at a woman. What if from the point of view of inherent purity, it's not a problem? How can we move into these things fully and then bridge it realization to, well, everyday people, so that they can have the millisecond chance to connect to his mind stream? It's kind of what a Buddha fundamentally is doing. He is eating, he is smoking weed, he is smoking cigarettes, he is fornicating, he is drinking. Why would he do that? It's a mind fuck. He does that so he can make a bridge. He can relate. From this point of view, you can really understand someone like Trungpa Rinpoche. On a basic modern level, he just looks like an abuser. He looks crazy. He looks insane. But from the point of view of realization, it just makes absolute sense. He's just planting seeds. You have hippies who just smoke weed all the time. He relates with them. He gets them to wear suits, work a job. It's like, what the fuck? Trungpa Rinpoche would sleep with anyone. But can you imagine a Buddha not having that restriction? It's like inconceivable. Well, I'm not saying all Buddhas are like that, but it's like, yeah, you seduce them and then fuck, get a job. What do you mean? You have to grow up. What? Like, are we just gonna be in love and light? It's complicated because it's like literally when we enter that territory, it's unconventional and it's not based on the human logic.
Anyone familiar with the notion of there being both a gradual and instantaneous path, and those things do not contradict each other. And what we desire in this way is always here. It's not something you want for or lust for in that way. It's something you aspire for. And Zonzar Khyentse Rinpoche says something like you long for it. So in that sense, you see that there's a difference between aspiration and motivation. There's still being this gradual training. There's no contradiction in it. We relate both beyond and through conventions. It's not that these distinctions don't exist. It's our understanding in relation to them and what even existing is. It's not negating them.
If what we can only measure is that kind of linear progression of I'm going up because my meditation is helping me to feel more bliss, feel more clear, feel more peaceful. If that's kind of unlocking at the level, it feels like you're going like this. But actually it's not the case, right? So that's why aspiration and the longing to so-called finish the game matters. Go all the way, no matter what.
Yeah, and that's distinguishing the difference between aspiration and motivation. With aspiration, what we're doing is we're addressing misalignment with our disposition. Motivation is conditional. It's using that same sort of causal reasoning where it's like, I do this to get this. If I do this, I will get this, and I do this for this reason. That sort of motivation functions when we can make sense of things. Like we keep talking about meaning making and making sense of things. And motivation functions when we can make sense of things. But like all other conditioned phenomena in that sense, it's exhaustible. It has its own invalidation built in. this dispositional aligning, we generate aspiration. It takes us into territories that are beyond our conventions, beyond our ability to make sense of things. That's where the conventions keep that sort of existential or terror of the unknown at bay, while also reifying the problem. Our aspiration in that unknown, when the fear strikes, when we're in that unknown, our aspiration that we cultivate keeps us oriented. The conventions are a ground for us to stand on. Beyond our conventions, we're just free falling. And so our aspiration keeps us oriented in that free fall, which is all there ever really is, right? There is no ultimate ground in that sense. And so then when the fear takes us into the unknown and impairs our ability to think, we're still oriented to act virtuously. More and more virtuous action transcends the conventions of the world. And so then as we accumulate merit, more and more we're just engaging in virtuous action.
We work with motivation to get you from point A to point Z. The actuality of the situation is you most likely would have to traverse through the uncertain terrains in the middle, B to Y. The actual vehicle to traverse is actually aspiration, because it's probably going to not look like A to B to C to D. It could be like A to E, back to B, then to F, then to C again, blah, 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 blah. To have that kind of North Star as your deepest calling, your deepest longing is aspiration.
It's almost like a gravitational pull to go beyond even the alphabets.
Well, we flow in the waters of desire anyway, but then to align on the desire under that North Star, instead of just today I crave this, tomorrow I crave this, to gang up, to like take on the entire resources that you have available on that desire, on that craving, now unified, transform, rehabilitate into that longing, into that disposition.
That's why the training's in life.
Yeah. That's why the training is in life.
We mentioned parkour, right? We used to call this like parkour of consciousness. It's build up the fitness to be able to maneuver through life. My training just becomes life training when you see that there's absolutely no distinction between life and mind. So realization fitness becomes like a lifestyle that's no different than Nike, the goddess of victory.